friends, we are in the golden age of Marvel trying to top themselves.
Oh yeah.
It
In the
is
best
it
way.
is on. It is on, friends. What's up, everybody? Welcome to this week's episode of the Talkin' Pop podcast. One of the beauty things about the Super Bowl is all the fun commercials, but also the movie trailers, and Marvel brought it this year, my friends.
Oh yeah.
We got a much more fleshed out trailer for Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. The amount of times that I've called this movie Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, it's Doctor Strange
in it.
He's already in there, Rob.
Yes.
He's in the mix.
Mhm.
And let me tell you, after watching this trailer,
We got
We're-
so much more stuff to talk about.
oh yeah, this
So
movie is
much
going
more.
to be bonkers.
It also all kind of circles back to the fact that those reshoots were necessary, clearly.
Yes.
Yeah, I think originally when you hear the words reshoots,
Yeah.
sometimes it's for very practical reasons.
Mhm.
Other times it spells a bit of disaster, but I think
Most times.
I think you have a movie like Spider-Man No Way Home that proves the power of the cameo.
Oh
And
my God, yeah.
Kelly,
This
the
seems-
entire saying for Phase 4 of the MCU is the power of the cameo.
It is becoming their new formula.
Mhm.
And I wonder, there's part of me that wonders if that's been the plan all along with the multiverse, or if it's become just a fun addition that they're able to explore because of Disney's endless bags of money and their acquisition of everything ever that exists.
Can I
Correct.
correct you? It's
Yeah.
becoming the formula for sequels to establish characters. Like, they're still
Mhm.
establishing new characters, Shang-Chi, Eternals, and with some of the new Marvel shows, like we're gonna get
Mhm.
She-Hulk, Miss Marvel, what have you. But in these like sequels with established characters, it comes back to the question that we've discussed on the show multiple times, which is how are we gonna top Endgame? And
Yeah.
hey, we spent a shitload of money acquiring 20th Century Fox. So let's
lot.
bring these characters in and let's make the multiverse.
Well, I also think that it's so interesting that it's not only a vehicle for establishing these new characters and bringing back old characters. It's actually pretty brilliant when you think about some of the and we've talked about this quite a bit in reference to other movies that I hope they retcon this. It's the perfect vehicle to fix certain things or flesh out certain characters. And even some of these characters that we didn't end up liking in other movies and things, you've got this way of just being like,
Oh yeah, it's still cool
let's
to see
circle them
them.
back, because now it's actually still cool to see them, or rumored things that never transpired or whatever. It's like they're just throwing the proverbial kitchen sink at this thing, and then it's so interesting to me. And we've talked about this at length, that this is just, if you told us or any millennial or Gen X that we would be at this stage of comic book movie, I don't think anybody would have actually ever believed it. And I think even the people that are the most enjoying it now, that maybe weren't even comic book fans, that were just fans of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, I don't think they would have believed you either. I just don't think anybody really saw this coming, as far as the deep dives that we're doing now. And it's just fun. It's just a good time. It's a good
it's so
show up.
exciting.
Like,
Can
get
I-
out of your seat and
Can
cheer.
I
Such a
just
rush.
can I
Yeah.
just totally take us off course for a second? Like,
Why
forgive
not?
me.
It's our podcast. We can do
We
what we want.
we weren't planning to talk about this trailer, but I do just want to mention it briefly because it has some resonance in what you just said, Brad. So there
Mhm.
was also a Sonic 2 trailer that came out.
Yeah.
And the reason why I bring that up is because there is a reference in that trailer to the Winter Soldier.
Yes.
Sonic calls Knuckles
Yes.
the Winter Soldier. So, and I actually turned to my partner in that moment and said, did I ever think I'd live in a world where they can make a pop culture reference to Bucky Barnes, the Winter Soldier? And everyone's
No.
like, got it.
Yeah,
Like,
everyone got it.
It's
yeah.
unbelievable. Yeah, so they've taken over the world.
Kevin Feige, folks. Okay, listen. As you guys know, when I get really excited about something, I do a deep dive. I've become a vacuum of information, right?
Sometimes yells into the mic.
Yes.
Well.
see the Eternals and how I just did a deep dive on Celestials. Okay,
Yeah.
like same thing here. But before we do that, I had a couple observations of this trailer I wanted to flag. Before I get into my deep dive, I just wanted to flag that it does look like we are getting the Wanda Maximoff heel turn in this movie.
Yeah.
Yes.
We see her at
It very much seems like it.
It picks up where at the end of WandaVision, where she's sort of isolated herself, and now she's got a bunch of trees growing around her, and she's sort of battling her inner demon, I guess, in Scarlet Witch.
Or witch.
Inner witch, yes, in the Scarlet Witch, and we see her with the red magic. There's a
chaos
quote
magic.
Yeah, a quote where she says to Strange, "You break the rules and become a hero. I do it and become the enemy. That doesn't seem fair."
That's the best line for me. That was the biggest takeaway from the whole thing.
Is she gonna be? Do we think she's gonna be the main villain in this movie? I think there's gonna be a few different villains in this movie.
I actually think so. I think she's gonna.
I think so too. Yep.
Yep. I think she's gonna turn out to be that way. So what do we think about the
Strange variant from What If, who we're seeing in live action here?
I mean, I think because there's a couple of Strange variants in this trailer. I think that we're gonna see him sort of tumbling through the multiverse, so to speak. I don't know over what time horizon. You literally
see that in the trailer.
Well, yeah, exactly. And I think
Chavez.
And I think we're going to see himself in these different universes. I think the What If version will be one that he takes on, but I think Wanda's driving the bus on the chaos. Like, we're talking about Multiverse of Madness. Like, I think that, I mean, in her whole, like, in House of M, this is taking like massive cues from, it's like she's bending reality, right? So I think she's going to be driving the bus.
The pain of losing Vision and her family at the end of WandaVision is what is sort of fueling her to go this route. We also see a quick shot where it looks like she is battling a Captain Marvel variant. People are speculating that it's Monica Rambeau, also from WandaVision.
See, I have a different speculation on that, but I'm going to save that for a later portion of this conversation.
Oh, okay. I was going to say, not for another episode.
No.
Okay.
Trust me. I'll it'll come back.
It's time to get into the deep dive, folks. So
I've been waiting.
This trailer essentially confirms the existence of the Illuminati. I went all in on the Illuminati for the last 2 days.
Patrick Stewart.
Yeah.
Patrick
Stewart. In the comics,
isn't that your neighbor, Brad?
He's my neighbor here. Yeah. I haven't bumped
walk
into him
over
yet.
and ask him.
Go ask
him.
Get the inside scoop.
If I swear to God, if I find him, I will tell him that we have a podcast.
Come on. How about a guest spot?
Imagine he was just sitting here with me. How much would you two freak out?
Guys, I'm trying to do my deep dive here.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Rob.
Sorry, Rob. Sorry. Go ahead.
So, come on. So, the Illuminati is a group of heroes in the comics that secretly meets and exchanges information around otherworldly threats. So, like, sort of a low-key government of superhumans.
Mm-hmm.
I think for the purposes of this film, I think they're going to be a governing body of the multiverse. We see Doctor Strange being accompanied into this massive room by Ultron bots.
Mm-hmm.
So first you see that and you're like, Ultron bots. But this seems to indicate that in this universe, Tony Stark, who is heavily rumored to be the superior Iron Man variant played by Tom Cruise.
Insert me circling back on who I think that is in that clip. Continue.
He's perfected the Ultron program, and the Illuminati has built a suit of armor around the world. So Iron Man in the comics, Tony Stark is one of the original members of the Illuminati. And I think that might be the case here, but I do not think it's going to be Robert Downey Jr.'s Tony Stark, obviously. I think it's going to be Tom Cruise's Tony Stark.
Yep.
Can I just say really quick, because there's still no real confirmation that it's Tom Cruise. And at this point, I think the masses have assumed that this is Tom Cruise.
We riot.
Yeah, we riot.
If Tom's not in it, we riot.
We storm Walt Disney Studios and we burn it to the ground. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah.
But I think the idea that it isn't him at this point would be devastating. I just
devastating.
I'd be actually so devastated if they reveal this variant of Iron Man and I don't see Tommy C in that Iron Man suit. I'm gonna flip out.
Yeah,
I just don't know how else you put. I don't know who else you put in there that makes it like that gratification and the connection of having like that was the guy that they originally wanted in the movie before, even though clearly again. And I always find it funny because it's like you can't picture anybody else doing it now other than Robert Downey Jr. Other than the fact that Tom was rumored early on, and to have him come back and step into that role is such a deep dive.
That's
like
awesome.
That's such a nerd movie filmmaker deep dive.
But that's that's what's so fun about this. That's what's so fun is
I'm in.
This is like endless possibilities. Like, because I think it's I think it's going to happen. Like, I think the internet is just like far too smart these days, almost like to the point where I'm like, stop ruining it. Because how much would you freak out if you were in the theater and then just like Tommy C comes walking around the you'd freak out.
This I think builds the hype, and I think this is why Spider-Man No Way Home made as much money as quickly as it did, is because I think ahead of time, like, you don't want a spoiler in the sense of like, Tobey Maguire is going to show up and this is what he's going to say. But like, you do want it out there that Tobey Maguire's in this movie.
There's a chance he's
totally.
in this.
Totally. That's why they put the Patrick Swayze reveal in this trailer.
Patrick Swayze? Wow.
Oh.
I mean, that Marvel money, that Disney money is really...
wow.
Listen, if I've had the time of my life.
He just
came on. I would.
Oh my
I'd
god!
Probably go with it at this point.
Wow, Ghost 2. No, Patrick Stewart. Patrick Stewart. This is why he's revealed in the trailer, because I don't think Doctor Strange on his own. I think that he, for a lot of people, the GA is maybe a skippable movie. Like. People love Doctor Strange, but not in the same way that they loved Iron Man or Captain America or anything like that. And so I think there was part of me that was like, why did they reveal this? And then I'm like, oh, right, to sell movie tickets as fast as possible. But I do think you don't make a reveal like that in a trailer if there isn't a bigger reveal to be had in the actual movie. So that's why I'm quite confident that Tom Cruise will show up. Quite confident that Patrick Swayze will not show up.
Yeah.
So, you know.
Can you imagine that was like the greatest like one-off call of all time? Somehow they worked in like a CG version of him. I also, again, there's still no real confirmation at this point. That is John Krasinski coming in. But
I'm gonna get to that, Brad. So basically,
Rob,
they bring
go
him.
ahead.
The Ultrabots bring him into the room, and there's these like elevated chairs with what is presumably the Illuminati, and that is where we get the biggest moment of the trailer, where we hear Patrick Stewart say, "We should tell him the truth," and then you see his shoulder kind of wheel up, and so you're like, he's in there, and then. Because I love the internet and I love everyone piecing together clues from the poster and like silhouettes and stuff, some of the other Illuminati members are rumored based on like I said, from the poster and from like people taking screenshots and zooming in. I think you're gonna get Baron Mordo. So from like Chiwetel Ejiofor coming back as Baron Mordo.
You think he's on?
I think at first, I think at the beginning of the movie, I think so in the original version of the Illuminati, Strange is on it because he's the Sorcerer Supreme.
Yeah.
Right.
I think Baron Mordo will be the Sorcerer Supreme
in this universe. Hence the fresh locks.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes.
Based on seeing her shield in the poster, Haley Atwell's Captain Carter, also a member of the
That
Illuminati.
was very exciting for me too. I think that's such a great character to bring back in.
But it's the Captain Carter what if version. So Haley Atwell's gonna come in and be like,
yeah.
No, I know, but that's what I'm saying. Like that general, like the actress and the general vibe of the character to bring her back in. I'm in.
So, Brad, people have zoomed in, and an original member of the Illuminati is also Reed Richards. So, is it John Krasinski? Is it Ioan Gruffudd from the original Fantastic Four movies? Which, that's who I was referring to. Yeah, it would be cool to see him. Right.
Well, we already have rumored that there's Eric Bana's going to be coming back, or he's at least like in the what do you call it? Like the opening scroll of Marvel and MCU. Like there was like a flash that, and I think was it No Way Home? It was one of the newer films. Like they just came out. He was in like the opening.
The Marvel.
No, it was in the opening of the first Multiverse of Madness teaser.
Oh, okay.
Did that as well? Okay.
Yes.
Maybe there's more than one then. I think there actually might be more than one. But anyways, regardless, I think it's fascinating that these movies that I don't want to say they tanked, but they didn't really live up to people's expectations at the time when this was all starting to happen. I wouldn't be opposed to it. I think it would be kind of fun to see, even though those movies were just like a blech to me. But the big thing that I don't know that I'm hearing referenced right now is that it still very might well be John Krasinski. I feel like there's too much silence going on anytime he's mentioned, as far as like what the studio's saying, what the whoever, like other cast members, whatever they're saying. It's always kind of like it was like with Andrew Garfield when they're like, are you in this? And he kept playing it so straight faced. I'm getting that same kind of vibe. My issue at this point is I really want to see John Krasinski just in that role. A lot of people are starting to say that he might just be playing the variant that you're only going to see in this.
Yeah, that's what I was going to that's what I was going to say is like, I think as you're assembling this
wouldn't this
group
be the
of
perfect
people,
way to introduce him though?
But because like, do you want to have the Fantastic Four's origin be the Fantastic Four? Like,
yeah, which is a
you know what I mean? Like,
could you not bring them over from a different universe and drop them in this one, and then you can skip the origin again?
I don't know. I think they're fair. I think it's fair. I think it's totally possible. I think there are people who hold the Fantastic Four, people who are like real OG comic fans.
Marvel's first family.
Marvel's first family, exactly. And it's like, I think there would be people who were disappointed not to see an origin done by Feige because those original movies are so silly. So yeah, I almost like, I love the idea of seeing Krasinski, but I'm like with you, Brad, where I'm like, ooh, but then are we just kind of relegating him to like the cameo version? How does it all work out? So it'll be interesting to see. And then also, the same can be said, I think maybe with the exception of like Tom Cruise, which if that is in fact true, it really does feel like a cameo.
It better be true. It better be true.
I think that's like I think it's a question we can pose of all the members who ultimately end up in this group of people is like, is this version of Peggy Carter going to be seen again, or is it a one-off? Like, this will be a really interesting question
even come
to see.
Back to Pat Stewart. Like, do we think Pat Stewart is going to be around in a bunch of movies going forward? No, but could you use him to introduce mutants into the MCU? Yes.
Yeah.
So,
well, and that's my thing. I do think it would be interesting to get a non-linear maybe telling of the Fantastic Four origin, meaning like, again, kind of, you don't necessarily need to just like drop them right into the action, but you could have a bit of an interesting angle rather than just doing the kind of superhero movie trope of just, here's the origin story again. And especially with a franchise that's now been technically done twice, as much as we talk about the original one, the remake.
Oh yeah. What if it's Miles Teller, guys?
Well, Actually,
Tom
you know
and
what? Him
Miles.
yeah, Maverick. What's up?
Yeah.
Oh wow. Hey, that'd be interesting. Maybe they took a break from shooting.
Yeah, Tom
Nice.
gave him a
I
ride.
No thanks.
no, that listen.
Not
I
into it.
think I very much think no on that one. But
Yeah.
but my point being, I think it would be interesting to almost have him introduced in this, and then have a lot more reference to something as far as like the rest of the Fantastic Four within this movie, which I am quite sure they're going to
But
do,
what
especially
are
if
the
you're getting them.
ramifications of the multiverse going to be, Brad? Like, and Kelly, like what? Like, is it just going to be a movie where all these universes open up and it's like windows and we're driving by and we're like, hey, and then at the end, like they all close and we just go back to normal? It's like, no, like there's going to be
No.
ramifications. There's going to be people crossing over. That's why I'm thinking it's like, I don't think, like, I think it's the perfect way to maybe you do a movie with the Fantastic Four where you see their origin in sort of a flashback manner, like, and I just think it's the perfect way to pick Krasinski up and whoever the other three are going to be and just drop them into the MCU. You're here.
See, I just struggle with, I don't think you're necessarily wrong. I just struggle with that you're going to introduce Marvel's first family in a Doctor Strange sequel. Like, I think that's what I struggle with. I think there may be other characters, and I think this could be like, oh, okay, we know the Fantastic Four are out there, and like same with X-Men. Like, I think there is, I think you're like, they basically just introduced Daredevil in a very quick scene in Spider-Man No Way Home. So it's certainly possible. I don't know. I'm having trouble wrapping my head around it, just given like also looking at like the scale and scope of like, you look at this trailer and it's like, you know, you've got the what if version of Doctor Strange. There's also the one in the you know, the name's escaping me, but the one that's got the ponytail. There's that version of Doctor Strange.
It's
Defender or something like that.
Strange.
Something like that. So you got the ponytail version. So we got
he looks cool as shit. That version of Doctor
Strange. We also have two versions of like Rachel McAdams' character. So it's just a lot to get through. So I just worry about, you know, if we're going to use this movie as a vehicle to introduce the Fantastic Four, are they getting a little shortchanged in the mix of everything else?
Well, here's what I'll say. Hold on.
Kevin Feige.
Yes.
Okay.
Here's what I'll say.
Right.
You know what I could actually picture, even as we're talking, even as we're talking here, like my mind is racing about like what Rob is saying, like what are the ramifications? What are you introducing? Like where it can't just be a vehicle for like, here's this person, here's that person, here's this person, here's that person. But by the same token, I do think that that's where, and we had referenced this earlier in other podcasts when we've talked about this, as far as, you know, clearly this is why they needed to do some reshoots. This is because this is very much going to be a vehicle for setting up pretty much everything that's coming in the future. So I do think that I would not be at all surprised to see a major villain get introduced, sticking with the Fantastic Four in Doctor Doom, getting something like, you know, you're getting this now all of a sudden this villain from this other multiverse or universe or whatever you want to call it, where the Fantastic Four are already operating and this is their big baddie. And now all of a sudden he's in quote unquote this, you know, main universe, and now that's when you get introduced to the Fantastic Four, which kind of kicks off that movie. To me, that kind of gives it a little bit more pathos, a little bit more leverage, as far as then, you know, you can always circle back and do like kick off even a sequel with, you know, having that kind of origin and show that whole unfolding without having to do like a step 1, step 2, step 3, you know, like the classic arc of how you tell a story. I think it would be much more interesting to tell it in kind of like a, oh shit, here's Doctor Doom, that kicks off this movie. But instead of just jumping right into the battles with him, it's kind of like, let's start it and show like some flashbacks to that and then kick into the actual fighting him.
I like where you're going with this, but I will see you, your Doctor Doom, and I will raise you. There's one character that no one is talking about who I think won't be a major part of this film, but I think will be alluded to and potentially in a post-credit scene. So if these rumors of the Illuminati being the overseers of the multiverse, if those are true, where does He Who Remains Kang the Conqueror fit in?
Well, in some
Because we know the
iterations, he's
TVA
been
was bullshit and something that he
yeah.
created, but wasn't that the TVA's job to trim the branches of
In some
of
iterations, Rob, he's been a part of the Illuminati.
So I think that is what we're gonna get here, because I read that too, and I think Kang will at one point have been a part of the Illuminati, and he'll have been exiled because for obvious reasons. And I think
all these things are possible. I think all these things are possible.
What do we know about Marvel? Okay, they're crescendoing to the next Avengers movie, which is going to be Secret Wars, which from everything we've seen and heard, Kang is going to be the main villain in Secret Wars.
Yeah.
So I think, like I said, I think you guys are right. I think at the end of the day, when you leave that movie and you say to yourself, who is the main villain? I think it is going to be Wanda Maximoff. But I think in the sort of periphery of the multiverse, there'll be people alluding to Kang. Maybe the Illuminati alludes to him at some point. Maybe in a post-credit scene, we see him. Like, do you remember at the end of Age of Ultron, the post-credit scene where it's the gauntlet and Thanos is like, fine, I'll just do it myself. Like something along those lines with Kang. But you know, Kang is more of like a laughy, jokey type character. So he's like kind of sitting back, like just like LOLing at all this chaos that's going on in the multiverse.
Well, in reference to Thanos, I thought it was interesting that within the trailer we got a shot of Doctor Strange getting turned into his body or face or whatever was getting turned into cubes, like essentially what happened to oh my god,
Drax,
thank you. What happened to Drax in Infinity War. And then I'm curious to see again, because there's all sorts of different angles you can take with this. Like, is he going to run in? Are they going to run into a different version of him? Are they going to run into a different version of, you know what I mean? Like, and again, I think all of these things are being alluded to. So I don't really think that this is us going out on some sort of like wild branch of like possibilities, even though it's fun. It actually has a base to it, simply based on the fact that there's certain connections you can make because of the little clues we're getting, because of the certain people we're seeing cast in certain roles, because of, all of these little things. It's just showing you that this was so much a vehicle for leveling up Marvel and leveling up what they're doing over there.
That's why I think they did all those reshoots, man. I've said that.
Yeah, that's what I said.
I think this movie is going to do a lot of heavy lifting as far as the multiverse is concerned. That scene that you're talking about, Brad, that's Strange and America Chavez, who's another character that's being introduced in this movie, who I don't really know much about, except for the fact that she can teleport through like dimensions or universes.
From what I've gathered,
from
what I'm gathered in my modest research, like she has like a batshit crazy origin. Like I doubt they're gonna go into that. And actually, she was supposed to be in Spider-Man: No Way Home. She was actually going to. Yeah, there's a picture of her from the concept art that they put together, and then as Kevin Feige does so well, knows when to sort of draw the line on maybe doing too many things.
No. What I heard, Kelly, was because COVID delayed. So Multiverse of Madness was originally supposed to come out before No Way Home, and so because COVID screwed up the filming schedule,
No
Way Home came first.
Okay.
That's what I.
So you would have actually got
that's why they delayed America Chavez.
Okay,
because apparently America Chavez was supposed to be the one who originally brought Toby and Andrew through.
Yes, yeah.
And they nixed that because they're waiting to introduce her in Multiverse.
Interesting. I wonder, man. They kind of lucked out, and this is again, this is going like really deep into it. But again, think about something like this happening with another movie, another franchise. You couldn't just do that. You couldn't just go, let's just switch this around and have her introduced later and do all this kind of stuff. But this sort of freedom has opened up to them to do all these kinds of things.
Yeah,
And
that's what
it's
makes
not
this so amazing, man. The heavy
well,
lifting
it's
is
n
done. This is what I
well, the
said to
heavy
you
lifting,
guys.
yeah, the heavy lifting is done, and they also don't really have to worry about things not necessarily lining up exactly the way, because that's kind of the plot of the multiverse. That's kind of the plot of what they're going for in general, as far as bringing in other characters and how they are appearing and from different movie franchises and everything else. It's actually pretty interesting, and I'm sure for Disney and Kevin Feige, it's actually probably a bit of a weight off of his shoulders just to be like, we'll blame it on the multiverse. Let's just do this and just shift this
Well,
movie
the
over
fact
here.
that Disney will just eat the costs of like cutting out her entire scene and like whatever, and
Yeah,
they're like, whatever, it's fine, it'll work out later, like it'll all even out in the end, like
yeah.
just totally like Kevin Feige's just earned that creative freedom.
Oh, big
Um,
time.
two things I want to touch on with you guys quickly. Brad, you brought up the part in the trailer where Strange and America Chavez are falling through the various universes. People are freaking out because if you look closely, there's a universe that is animated,
Mhm.
and a lot of people are like, "What
Yes.
animated universe is that?"
Yeah.
My God.
So
My
like,
God.
we'll wait and see where that goes. And the second one, zombies. Like we see like a zombie Strange at the end.
Yeah.
We see a
Yeah.
zombie Wanda. Like we see like I don't know what that means. But
I'm choosing not to read too much into that one, and the reason why is I think back to the first Doctor Strange, when he's first kind of discovering the world of magic and sorcery, and there's that incredible scene of him kind of going through and the multiple fingers and all that sort of like
Yeah, yeah.
crazy insane acid trip of imagery. And so there's part of me that sort of thinks like, is that a little bit of this, but maybe just like blown out to really sort of show you the expansiveness of the multiverse. Like this is him going through that montage of discovery, so to speak, and
or it could be
finding
the
himself.
Dark Strange variant.
Yeah, sure. Like it's funny when I watch this trailer, there is part of me that thinks, "Oh man, like are they doing too much here? We got zombie, we got this, we got that." And then I'm like, "No, it's a Doctor Strange movie." And I think that some of these things are going to move quicker than maybe the trailer suggests that they will. Like I think we'll have another one of those as I'm calling it acid trip montages of just like him figuring out just what's going on, and I'm sure Wanda or maybe Kang even behind the scenes are also pulling strings to have him see things that aren't there, or
Mhm,
are
mhm.
bringing him into the most terrifying of universes. This movie has been described as a horror movie, so maybe that's like a sequence kind of
Yeah.
similar to in Spider-Man Far From Home, the scene when Mysterio has Spider-Man seeing like zombie Tony Stark and stuff. Like I could see there being like a sequence like that. That's actually quite terrifying.
Well, and think
Um
about it, because Sam Raimi, like other obviously of our generation, was much more known for Spider-Man, but a lot of his movies are in the horror genre.
Yeah.
Mhm.
That's where he got his start. So I think that's also obvious as to why they wanted to bring him back into a Marvel movie, I mean, at least. But
Yeah.
this guy had some heavy lifting to do, and anybody that was starting to rip on the fact that they were having to do reshoots, like just I think this was a massive undertaking. As much as people want to go on about the Infinity Wars and all these kinds of movies where there was a lot of heavy lifting to do, this is something that's actually setting up the whole thing, as far as I'm concerned, as far as what they're
Yeah.
doing in the future.
Yep.
So this is a very, very important movie for them.
Yeah.
And quite honestly, I wouldn't have even been that shocked if they kind of went, we're gonna take a couple months and push this back until this thing is fucking ready. Because you don't want to, whiff essentially on what you're trying to do in the future. So if that
Brad,
means
2 words, my
reshoots,
friend.
whatever.
2 words. Kevin Feige.
I thought you were gonna say
That
Tom
man
Cruise again.
does not whiff.
Was Tom involved?
Man
No,
does
he
not
doesn't.
whiff. He doesn't. So, and here's the thing I will say about directing these Marvel movies now is, in no way do I want to downplay any strain or stress that Sam Raimi probably had. Like this was probably, to your point, it was probably a massive undertaking. But I do
Mhm.
feel like these movies now, they're done by a committee. Like,
yeah, true.
when you think
But
of
again,
a
how do
movie
you-
like The Batman,
Yeah.
Matt
we need to
Reeves.
start a bat counter at the
Yeah,
bottom
that's
of
what I
our
said, yeah.
podcast.
But when you
yeah.
think of a movie like that, Matt Reeves went into the studio and he said, "This is my movie, butt out, essentially. I'm making my movie." Whereas I think
Mhm.
with Marvel now, it's like you sign on to direct these movies with the understanding and acceptance that Feige will cut your movie to shit if he thinks it's not doing what it needs to do for the overall greater story. And I do think there is there's like a committee approach to these projects now, where it's like Sam Raimi, I don't think is necessarily coming in there and making his vision of a Doctor Strange movie. I think you probably interview for the director job and Feige looks at you and says, "This is the movie we want you to make." And I'm sure he gets like, I'm not saying like he's coming in and just being like a cut and paste director. That's not what I think at all. But there are certain
No.
things you have to hit in the overall.
Like, yeah, I think though he's like, I don't think it's, I know you're kind of just talking in like, hyperbole, but it's like Sam Raimi was engaged because he knows horror. And so Kevin
Yes.
Feige knew
Yeah.
from what was going on with the committee that like that's kind of the direction that they wanted to go in. And so they thought to themselves, who's the most interesting person to take us there? And like that's why, and you said not whiffing. I'm gonna maybe disagree about Eternals. Go back and watch that episode, folks.
Mhm.
But that's really like that was the thinking behind hiring someone like Chloe Zhao, though. Like, right? So it's like, yep, they knew what they wanted to do with Eternals, but in their
Yeah,
minds,
no,
they needed
you're
Chloe
right.
Zhao's lens
Yeah.
on it.
Yeah, no,
You
I'm
on
just
the
saying,
entire
like
picture,
Matt
yeah.
Reeves
Yeah.
sits down and goes, "We want to make Bruce Wayne emo." It's like I don't think you get to just make that creative decision in the Marvel world. Like he doesn't just get to show up and say, "In this one, Doctor Strange is going to be bald." Like
I do think it's funny that you just made the connection between making a character emo and knowing that Sam Raimi did that to Tobey Maguire in Spider-Man 3.
you
I
just
think
see
it's
Doctor
quite
Strange
ironic.
like,
I'm walking out of the theater. Although actually, think about it. Think about this multiverse thing. If they actually did a little call
Yeah,
out to that, it
things
would be
Toby's been
pretty funny.
rumored, dude.
Things
Toby's
just
also
got
been
out of
rumored.
hand.
Yeah,
they've-
things just.
Toby has also been rumored to be doing a cameo appearance in this film too. That is a name that has been thrown around as well. Could you imagine?
Well, he's clearly on contract now, so
it's
good for
it's
you.
in that. Imagine his cameo is when Strange and America Chavez are falling through the various like multiverses, and in one of them you just see like,
I wouldn't
Or-
be shocked. I genuinely wouldn't, knowing that Sam Raimi's also been tied into this. It's so funny. You know what? If there's a bet to take in Vegas about that, I'd put some money on that. I think
Mhm.
that's actually a pretty astute bet.
yeah.
So good call, guys.
Okay, so two more things to get through here. First one, quickly, we're gonna go from Marvel to Marvel and Moon Knight.
Yes.
A little short Moon Knight TV spot aired during the Super Bowl as well. We didn't learn a ton from this story wise, but we did get some badass news shots. Like we got
what we
some
closer looks at-
learned. Go ahead,
Yeah.
Kelly.
what we learned was that his suit looks awesome.
Yes.
Like
Way
that.
more action.
I want that cape. Where do I get my hands on that moon?
It does look
cape?
amazing. It does look amazing.
Yeah, and like
probably
the suit coming on his body, like it looks sick.
Yeah.
probably from a Halloween store come October.
Yep.
It's probably a fair bet that you'll get your hands on one.
We also
But-
got like another look at Khonshu the Moon God walking up
Mhm.
behind an unsuspecting Stephen Grant, and a few more shots of Ethan Hawke saying his line. That must be very difficult. The voice is in your head. There's chaos in you. Embrace it.
Mhm.
The shot of him like expanding his moon cape, or
awesome.
or the shot of him catching his moonerang.
His moonerang. See, this is the thing, and we've talked about this at length. There's so many references that I'm sure I'm missing because I don't really know the character that well. And again, it's like I'm cool with it. I'm
Yeah.
cool with it. Like
Yep.
there's people on there that I'm sure just dissecting this thing to a fine nub, like we have done with other things that we're passionate about. This is not a character that I'm like overly passionate about, just from the sense that I didn't grow up with him. I don't know too much about him. but I'm very much excited to see where this goes, and to see some of these kind of epic shots, and to see some of these kind of, again, like I went on like a man crush rant about Ethan Hawke when we first talked about the trailer for Moon Knight, and we got like some great new shots to him too. And I think that that's probably the biggest takeaway for me, is just that it's just leveling up the hype, like any good TV spot is supposed to do, or teaser is supposed to do. You're just supposed to kind of little more, and I think that that's what we got. I don't think we got any sort of like big reveal out of this that I'm at least aware of, unless you guys saw something that I didn't. Which is very
honestly, the big reveal with respect to this series came last week in an interview with Kevin Feige.
Oh, you beat me to it. I was just pulling it up. Read it out. Read it out.
Let's go. I gotcha. So we've talked a lot on this podcast about Marvel integrating these sort of Marvel Knights, like darker characters, and like how are they going to do that? And so Kevin Feige answered our question in an interview with Empire, where he says, there are moments when Moon Knight is wailing on another character and it is loud and brutal, and the knee-jerk reaction is, we're going to pull this back, right? No, we're not pulling back. There's a tonal shift. This is a different thing. This is Moon Knight. So we're getting violence and adult PG-13, like darker, more brutal Marvel.
Selfishly, this bodes so well for Daredevil.
Yes.
When I heard that, Blade. And Blade. I don't know how you even do Blade and not like how do you do Blade and not have it be at least PG-13? That bodes so well for those franchises that it was worrying me, like a lot of people, that I just didn't know how they were going to layer it in, if they were going to have kind of like another umbrella company of Disney and Marvel, that they were going to be able to do this kind of not off Disney Plus necessarily, but potentially. So to know that you're getting a show that will be on Disney Plus, that is going to have that darker tone that we've wanted to see in other franchises, like just previously mentioned, that's huge. That's huge. It's a huge thing for him to come out and say, and for Disney not to shy away from. Because like we've talked about this at length before as well, that I do love that Disney is at its core still staying true to, what made them what they are, like
family
Pixar,
fun,
family fun,
wholesome family fun,
movies with a message, movies with a, whatever, all those things. That is what made that company what it is. And I'm glad to see that they're not like necessarily going way off of it. But this is also a very different day and age for kids that age, where it's like, like I said, I used to play quite a bit of Call of Duty, and there was kids on there that, my God, the mouth on those kids. And you're just like, whoa, okay. Well, like if I said half of that, I would have got my ass beat. Yeah.
Well, if you're a parent, just slap your parental controls on Disney Plus, and then little Timmy can't watch the show if he tries.
Well, the other thing I'll be curious to see. So first of all, let me just say that I was reaching for that quote as well, because I find it very encouraging, particularly, as we said, when we're talking about Blade and Daredevil and these shows that lend themselves to that darker underbelly, violent, approach. But I'll be interested to see, because what we've seen in this trailer is he doesn't seem to be wailing on human beings. And I do think, like, in one's mind, there is a bit of a difference between wailing on a mummy or whatever, a creature, versus like a human being. And then that'll be the same in Blade, right? It's a little bit different to be pounding on a vampire versus a human. And so it'll just be interesting watching them make this shift. And then especially if we're going to get into like introducing a character like Deadpool, it's really interesting watching them sort of navigate this transition.
Did you also actually see? I'm really glad you just brought up Deadpool.
Yes, I did see this.
That is a rumored person. It's pretty blurry, so it's hard to tell.
And also, Ryan Reynolds put in his Twitter bio joining the MCU on May 5th or 6th, whenever Doctor Strange comes out, which leads me to believe that is not happening. That is him being Deadpool and throwing a I think Deadpool is absolutely coming to this MCU. I think they're doing that on purpose to get people excited by him putting that in his Twitter bio. And if we do see him in Doctor Strange, I think it'll be the fastest 2-second cameo ever, where he comes in, makes a Deadpool Ryan Reynolds joke, and leaves.
Yeah.
Something
I
like
agree.
that. Okay. Last Super Bowl trailer. We're going to kick this over to my man Brad here, who is stoked out of his mind for this one. We got the first trailer for The Rings of Power on Amazon Prime. Over to you,
Let me just start off by saying here, I've watched many a Super Bowl in my time. And generally I save my jumping out of my chair for some beautiful play on the field, or some, close game, or some sort of bet that I have online, or what have you. I literally jumped out of my chair and inexplicably shushed my significant other for stop talking. I've been waiting so patiently for this teaser to drop. And I think it was about maybe not even a week ago, we got the Vanity Fair pictures that were released for the Rings of Power. And I was, obviously that just made it 10 times worse for me as far as like my expectations and my level of anxiety about like, what are we going to get? I just want to start, I'm going to kick this off in a different way, because as I was doing my nerd dive on what we got, what we saw, who's who and who's what, obviously some of these numbers are starting to fly at me as far as costs on what things cost for this. And to say that I was flabbergasted, I think is putting it mildly. We start off with the original trilogy that was made in the early 2000s with Peter Jackson, probably one of the most modern day important franchises, in my opinion, that's ever been made, simply because of the fact that what it's set up as far as how movies are made, and the faith of a studio in New Line Cinema to take a gamble essentially on a pretty untested big movie director like Peter Jackson, and spend $281 million on a trilogy, all to be shot at the same time. We're not talking about one movie that does well and then we make sequels and we make them in conjunction and say that it's the same thing. It's not the same thing.
Mhm.
That was I don't know that we'll ever see something like that again, quite honestly. It was a humongous undertaking. And for the time, $281 million was a big deal.
And to go all in and make Tolkien's whole trilogy.
To make them all, because Peter Jackson genuinely was at one point narrowing it down to hopefully get it all made into one movie. And then he was trying to get two. And then New Line Cinema, to their absolute credit, went, aren't there 3 books? There should be 3 movies. That was huge. That's a huge, huge deal. And the reason why I'm bringing this up is because they spent $281 million on that. Mm-hmm. And those movies are tremendous. Now, 2017 rolls around and Amazon buys the rights to Lord of the Rings for $250 million, borderline the same price of what it costs to make all 3 of those movies. And now we're hearing the totality of probably just for just this incarnation that they're making right now in the Rings of Power. I'm sure that they're going to do more of the first season upfront cost alone of $465 million and a grand total for 5 seasons. Because quite honestly, the heavy lifting is all going to be in the first season, because you got to build the sets, you got to cast, you got to do all this, all of it, all the production value. But we're talking about a price tag here of $1 billion, bringing the sum total of this to 1.2 billion with a B. $1 billion.
Hey,
Jeffrey Bezos.
Bro, Bezos is worth
money. He's got that book money.
Bezos is worth 179 billion. So this is just pocket change for him.
Yeah.
Listen, that is still a massive upfront cost.
Oh, yeah.
And I am getting that same vibe, even though it's not the exact same thing. It's quite honestly, it's a very similar take on the fact that New Line Cinema had done this back in the early 2000s, or, you know, you could actually say the early 90s, or excuse me, late 90s, when they were actually greenlighting this thing. So to have them, to have a company like Amazon, who's also not releasing these as movies, they're releasing it as a show,
which is awesome. It's
and to
awesome.
be able to flesh this thing out, because quite honestly,
Which, Brad,
J.R.R.
speaks to
Tolkien-
our conversation a few weeks ago. They're spending
Yes.
$1 billion on something for you to watch in your home.
Yeah.
Yes, and to a grandiose scale that we are now seeing in the teaser. And quite honestly, I'm unless you guys want to try going down this deep, dark road of nerd fantastical character names and this, that, and the next thing, there are other channels that will do a much more justice to that sort of deep dive. But what I'll get into here is that J.R.R. Tolkien was a man that essentially, you could say, potentially recreated or just created the fantasy genre in such detail, in such historical ways, because he was a lover of history and made these stories to feel like this was an ancient lost history that we have just kind of forgotten, and have it relate to things that we already know. So to have the freedom to go into a franchise in a TV format versus a TV format versus a film format, and be able to really flesh this thing out with characters that we're already aware of, because quite honestly, they could have gone all the way back. We're talking all the way back with the first age of the elves and the first age of the humans, man, if you want. But they could have done that.
Dude,
Instead,
I read the premise today. I think it looks awesome. Like, as someone who loved the original movies, like, the line that I lifted and put in my notes here is, the show will chronicle the forging of the rings, the rise of Sauron, which I'm stoked for, the fall of Numenor, and the alliance between elves and men.
Yes. And for me, because I think a big question mark for me was, okay, well, who's this really going to be centered around? Like, who's going to be like it's Saruman. Well, not Sauron. There's Saruman and Sauron. But there's also Galadriel. I know. But you run into the same problem with Star Wars. Again, any of these fantastical things, there's a lot of bleed over as far as like name similarities and things. But Galadriel seems to be previously played by Cate Blanchett in the original trilogy.
The center of this.
It seems to be, at least based on the teaser and what we're getting as far as like certain synopsis on, you know, IMDb, different formats and what have you about this. It seems like she is going to be the center of this whole thing. And it makes perfect sense in my mind to have her be that way, because she's someone who's, again, like any of the elves, because you're also going to get Elrond, who again was also previously played by Hugo Weaving, who's, you know, there's gonna be a lot of bleed over. So you're not going so far back as to completely have like brand new characters that we gotta
play off nostalgia here. Like,
you gotta get a little bit of that nostalgia, but they've also
get people jacked up, right?
Yes, but it's like all of these things that were referenced in the Lord of the Rings trilogy, especially the director's cut, because people like to bitch and moan about like, well, you missed this from the book. If you missed that, then go back and watch the director's cut. It's quite honestly, it's better anyways. But these are a lot of things that were referenced not only in the trilogy, but obviously in the book. And J.R.R. Tolkien had a massive amount of other books and writings about, you know, the expansion of these worlds and how far back it goes and who connects with who. And, you know, like I said, I'm not going to go into the deep dive of this. I think we could probably save that for when the trailer comes out. But as of right now, the thing I was also concerned about was, please don't go too far off base what Peter Jackson did with the original trilogy. And it looks like they're not.
No,
and I would love to know how you guys felt. Because for me, right off the hop, I was like, oh, thank God. Oh, thank God. Look at this. Look at this. It just looks like an expansion of what they did with that trilogy. And it's not like, you know, Amazon getting their ego on or whatever and being like, we got to do our own thing. It looked very much to me like an expansion of what we already got with Peter Jackson. And they're not trying to squash that.
No, I think it looks awesome. I think
it looks pretty undeniably, you know, I was going to say a continuation of, but I guess it being a prequel, it's a
Prequel, yeah.
it precedes it. I guess that's also like what I find so interesting about this is, you know, we talk about the dollars, and of course when you're talking about Amazon and Jeffrey Bezos, this is chump change, but it's interesting the investment being made in a prequel to me, because that's a formula yet that I'm not sure we've actually seen totally work. Like, you know, Brad, you're the biggest fantasy guy on this pod for sure. And you know, we had the Harry Potter series, and then we tried to do a prequel with Fantastic Beasts, which hasn't been a failure, but by no means
has it reached
meeting
the
heights of the original. And so that's what I find, that's what I'm going to find so interesting as this actually comes to life, is like, was this $1 billion investment, you know, is it gonna actually reach that level of hype and excitement and cultural like impact that original trilogy had? Or is it even meant to? Maybe not, but it's interesting to me.
I think you spend $1 billion, Kelly. I think it's meant to.
Yeah, okay, fair enough.
I was just thinking that. I was like, I'm pretty sure they want that money back at some point.
2 points for me. 3 points for me, actually. Brad, I love the point of that you made about Tolkien sort of creating the fantasy genre. I think that's true. Second one, I think the pomp and circumstance surrounding the show will be enough to intrigue people to check it out. Like the $1 billion price tag alone, people will be like, all right, I got to watch this.
Yes.
Third, I think one thing that's going to help people check out this show is Game of Thrones. Game of Thrones is something that was obviously
also
influenced by Lord of the Rings. And I think there was a lot of people who maybe ahead of Game of Thrones wouldn't necessarily call themselves like fans of the fantasy genre, but got really brought in and compelled by that show. So I think people who maybe didn't want to go see the original trilogy, because there are people out there who are like, I'm not sitting and watching this for 3 hours. And you could make the argument like, well, you'll sit and watch 3 episodes, but I do think mentally people in their mind, it's a little easier to
watch
an hour, take 5 minutes, watch an hour, take 5 minutes. Like, so I think people might check this out based on like fans who were brought into the genre by Game of Thrones, and the fact that it's a TV show might compel people to check this out. That's
a great point. And as much as, you know, there would be no Game of Thrones without Lord of the Rings,
for sure.
The Game of Thrones franchise is much more recent. It's much more
fresher.
new.
Yeah, it's fresher in people's minds.
It's fresher in people's minds. This is I do find that this is fascinating, especially to people that know how far back J.R.R. Tolkien took it, as far as, you know, if Lord, because actually in all honesty, he had books that he was working on that were never published, that were supposed to be the continuation of like what happened after the Lord of the Rings. And quite honestly, I've been waiting to see if, you know, the powers that be that own that, you know, IP would ever be open to, you know, an adaptation of, you know, where he was going with it and what would they do with it in the future, and just completely working off what he had written, but continue on with that thought process and what have you. But to already have this source material that refers to these massive battles that happen, the real kind of setting of the stage for Sauron and these battles that went on, and these. So for instance, there's even like there's a quick glimpse of it even in the teaser, where I believe, and again, these are sometimes assumptions because we think these characters are who they are. It was a pretty snappy teaser, but we think we see Galadriel on a boat, and you see whoever's on that little ship or whatever, as she gets pulled out of the water, he pulls the hair back to reveal the ear, essentially trying to find out if she's man or if she's elf. So there's also going to be like a little bit of like an undertone of, you know, basically like a racial thing, essentially alluding to like our groups don't mix. We're at war with you, you're at war with them. This is not something that works. Because when we get to Lord of the Rings, the trilogy that we all know, the books that we all know and love. It's more kind of like we're past that, and now we're kind of forced to work together. So there's almost like a bit of a love in. But in the more ancient times, it was like constant warring, and it's really kind of that old, you know, your enemy is my enemy and we can now fight together. But before Sauron appears, there's a lot of battles and contention between these different races. So to see that they're actually going to be diving into that, and we actually got like a little taste of that just from the teaser, was fascinating to me.
Well, I think
So
that's how you
even
spread it out over 5 seasons, right? Is like you start at like
yes,
the root
Yeah.
of it, and that's how you build it.
yes,
One last point I want to make about this show, and it's less about the show itself and more about like Amazon, is I think if this does well, the floodgates are going to open. Like I just told you guys
oh
that Bezos is worth 179 billion.
yeah,
179 billion. Um
imagine.
if this does well and they feel as though it was a wise investment, I think you're
Mhm.
going to start seeing this with Amazon. Like if I'm Netflix, I'm shaking in my boots right now a little bit, because if this does well, you're going to see Amazon upping the ante with the production value in their stuff, which means Netflix is going to have to keep up. So I think this is going to be
Yeah,
really interesting to watch and see how this show performs
yeah,
and
well
just
actually,
how
and
good it looks.
yeah, well, I mean, even in terms of like, we were talking about Game of Thrones, and when the show ended, there was a little bit of a void in that fantastical realm of, TV or film or whatever, and Netflix really tried to pick up that helm with The Witcher. And The Witcher, I like. I would not go as far as to say I love at this point.
Henry.
There's aspects of it, Henry Cavill.
Oh, I
Yeah,
love
it's
Henry.
certainly like it hasn't reached any sort of mass audience in
No,
the
not at
same
least.
way.
Yeah, at least not yet. But because again, I don't think it's worth writing off. I just don't think it's quite there yet. It might not, but it also might. But I think the real takeaway here is you have a franchise that already has like a massive fan base, and a trilogy that is widely considered, like I had already said, to be one of the finest moments, in filmmaking you're ever going to get. And to know that there's going to be more of an expansion, because I also think a lot of people were genuinely worried when Amazon bought this thing that they were just going to pump out some more movies, and it was like, no, don't you dare touch this. And to know that they respect the source material this much, although they do have, Amazon is going to be introducing some characters within this franchise, this new take, to kind of expand on this world more, to flesh it out. And a lot of them, even Peter Jackson had done that when he did the Hobbit franchise. It was more like he introduced characters to try to flesh out, like Evangeline Lilly in the Hobbit was not J.R.R. Tolkien source material. It was more to help kind of navigate some of the storylines and to try to help tell that story. I think that that's really what Amazon is doing, which also makes me think they appreciate on a really high level the source material, and to know that that's going to not only reach the new fans and the new people that are going to just be kind of caught up in this energy of like most expensive show ever made, but also honoring the fans that really do care about that and don't want it just skipped over and like have flashy CG, which obviously is cool. And to still get that practical filmmaking like it looks like we're getting with some of those kind of epic shots of like the New Zealand, landscape of mountains, and like you saw a shot of Galadriel riding on horseback and like a real kind of lead into a battle and all this. You're getting that true blue filmmaking again. It's huge. It's huge. I think the show is gonna do gangbusters.
We look
and
forward.
I will be front row center.
You look forward. We all look forward with bated breath.
Mm-hmm.
Before
To
we
the
get out of
Lord
here,
of the Ringiverse.
before we get out of here, because as I like to say when we go long, we've overstayed our welcome. I do have one quick thing I want to say. I want to get off my chest, and it's dear Warner Brothers. I know that you're a little preoccupied because you have a movie coming out in a few weeks that is going to take the pop culture world by storm, and you're all giddy about that, and rightly so. It is inexcusable that the first looks that we are getting of Michael Keaton in his new bat suit is from leaked Batgirl set photos because you can't get your shit together. Like, that is inexcusable. And listen, it looks awesome. The suit looks awesome. Keaton looks awesome. It looks awesome. I'm thrilled with it. Like, if you look closely, like, they've kind of modernized it a little bit. It's a little more form-fitting. The utility belt is not bright yellow. Like they've updated certain things about it.
Don't hate on the bright yellow.
But it is inexcusable that the first, like, we did not see, we did get those leaked John Campana pics, but for the most part, Marvel kept a pretty tight lid on No Way Home. It's inexcusable. Like, if you know that these set photos are out in the world, release an official still image. Get out in front of it. Have the first image that people see, like a professional photo of Michael Keaton in the suit with his cape
they have
up
them
like this. Yes.
Yeah,
they have
the pictures
like this. Do something like that. Like, because it's just I'm not gonna lie. Like, I saw those, and obviously, like I said, there's a part of me that's excited because I do think he looks awesome. But it's like, what? Like, really? Like, our first image of this historic moment of Michael Keaton putting on his iconic yellow oval suit, the first time we see it is in leaked set pictures. Like, that's inexcusable.
I don't know. I think I won't open too much of a can of worms here, but like, marketing takes many shapes and forms these days, and we spent a very big chunk of this episode talking about the amazing trailer that Marvel put out.
But we already knew this, though.
But I'm theorizing that maybe this wasn't so accidental.
Oh, but we already saw, Kelly, I would be there with you if we didn't already see his back in that Flash teaser and heard his voice, and we know he's in that.
Yeah, movie. But you know what? Maybe they didn't plan to do it. We got the Patrick Stewart reveal. They panicked. They put them out. I'm just saying, possibilities. I agree at this point. I'm ready to, like, see more than that weird, like, montage trailer that DC put out, which we didn't even talk about because honestly it wasn't anything to get excited about.
Again, I know we're staying long here. Like I said, I think I actually texted you guys just when I think I'm out, they pull me back in. I thought that there was something to be said about some of these like Hawkman and like whatever that we were starting to see in some of these little clips.
Baby, Dr. Fate.
That's what I'm saying. I'm not, you know what?
Yeah, the stuff from Black Adam.
World out there.
The stuff
from Black Adam looks pretty good.
Yeah. Yes. I definitely think, let me leave it on this. I definitely think that there's clearly a new wave going on over at Warner Brothers, but maybe they should jump the cost of the security over at Warner Brothers Studios and see if we can get some.
Like people are just snapping. Like, her suit, like, the reason why they had to put out the official image of her suit is because people are taking pictures of it. So it's like, well, like, can we hire some new security? Like, what are we doing?
Some security on the rooftops, kids. We need to get these pictures out. Yeah, like,
what are we doing?
I know.
Anyways, all right. That's going to do it for this week, guys. Thank you very much for checking us out. If you like what you see, hit that like and subscribe button below. Also, if you're listening to the audio version of this podcast, leave a 5-star review. Leave a little comment. Help us with the algorithm.
Help us.
I don't think that's too much to ask. Do you guys think that's too much to ask?
No, I think it'd be very nice.
You're quite honestly, you're all being quite lazy at this point by not leaving us a 5-star review and a nice little comment.
Thanks, everybody. We'll see you guys next week.
Bye.
Bye, guys.